Hey, it's Michael, and I've got a question for you. Is there someone out there that you would say you hate? Someone you can't stand, and you've never met them face to face? Welcome to the follow-up question. I'm your host, Michael Ashford. Come with me on a journey as I explore what it means to find common ground at a time when it feels increasingly harder to do so. To listen more than we speak so that we can understand that our differences don't have to divide us. My aim with this show is to bring you perspectives and ways of looking at issues or topics that perhaps you haven't considered before. To teach you how to ask more, better questions so that we might become more reachable as people. I'm a former journalist who believes everyone has a story to tell, and it's only when we ask questions and listen that we reveal what connects us as humans. Our dreams, our desires, our experiences, our ideas, and what we stand for rather than what we are against. My friends, this is a conversation that has been a long time coming. Here in episode 77 of this podcast, I have the conversation that I have been wanting to have since I first heard the question, how can you hate me if you don't even know me? I first came across this question back in episode 57 here of this show when I interviewed Jeff Schoep, the former leader of the National Socialist Movement. I even talked about Jeff in my TEDx talk at TEDx Manitou Springs in September of 2021. I'll let you listen to it here. I interviewed Jeff Schoep, who for 25 years led the largest neo-Nazi organization in the United States, the National Socialist Movement. And just a couple years ago, Jeff got out. He left. And I simply asked him, how? And Jeff told me that it was only when a couple people approached him, not with judgment, but with questions that caused him to see the humanity in others, that he finally realized he had to leave that life behind. How can you hate me if you don't even know me? Today, you'll hear my conversation with the man that asked Jeff that question. How can you hate me if you don't even know me? Today, I talk with Daryl Davis. Daryl is a black man who for decades has reached out to white supremacists like Jeff Schoep in his former life and members of the Ku Klux Klan to better understand why they harbor such hatred for him and people like him, people they don't even know. Daryl never set out to change anyone's mind, but by simply listening to them and having conversations with them, Daryl has changed hearts and minds, having been the driving force for more than 200 people to leave the KKK and white supremacist groups. As you'll hear, Daryl is a fantastic musician. In fact, he's a piano player. Let's listen to a little bit of his music to give you a taste. Daryl initially used his music to begin having these conversations with people who hated him but loved how he played the piano. I find that remarkable that even in the midst of so much hatred, even something as simple and unique and interesting as music can still bring us together. I encourage you to go listen to Daryl's TEDx talk, to go hear him tell how he got into the work that he now does to help us find common ground and to achieve understanding when there seemingly is none to be found. But as you'll hear in this conversation, there's something that I want to draw out and make sure that you understand from what you hear Daryl say today. you'll hear him pose a version of this question. If a black man like him can attend a KKK rally and stand in that discomfort to try to bring about a little bit more peace and understanding in the world, what is stopping anyone from leaning into uncomfortable situations? I read that the first time that you ever saw your father cry was when Martin Luther King was assassinated.
Yes.
Can you take us back? Can you take me back? What was that moment like for you? What happened for you in that moment?
Well, it was a very different thing. At the time, I was in Boston, Massachusetts, and we had just returned back to the States from an American embassy assignment. I grew up as an American embassy kid, traveling and living all around the world. And so I was at the age of 10, and we had just come back home. The State Department is in Washington, D.C., which is usually where we'd come back to. But my father wanted to finish up his master's degree at Boston University. So we came back to Boston for him to do that. And I was in our apartment, or our townhouse, watching Bewitched, the old TV show with a witch named Samantha Stevens and Darren Stevens. And it was on, I was watching it, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the program, there was like a beep, 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 which is usually a special bulletin. The news is going to interrupt the show. And this guy comes on, the newscaster, I think it was Walter Cronkite or somebody, and he's saying, he was almost crying. And he was saying that he hated to make this announcement, but the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King had just been assassinated in Memphis. Now, believe it or not, I had no idea at that time who Martin Luther King Jr. was. I was overseas. I was missing a lot of the things that were going on around here. And I'm not trying to be facetious or try to be funny or anything like that. I'm just being real. At the time, I'm 10 years old. I did not understand why this announcement had to interrupt my program. Because back then, they didn't freeze the program. They interrupted the program, but the program was still continuing in the background. So whenever you rejoined it, you'd already missed part of the program. And so I couldn't figure out why this couldn't wait for the 6 o'clock news. But I figured it was important. So I went into the study where my father was. My mother was in Roanoke, Virginia, visiting with her parents. And she was coming back, I think, the following day or 2 days later. Anyway, my father was in the study typing up something. And I said, hey, this news guy just broke in to the program and said that somebody named Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated. My father looked at me and said, what? And I told him again. And his head fell into his hands. And he started crying. And not making a lot of noise, but, you're just tearing up. And I'd never seen that before. I've seen my mom cry over different things, but my father was a very strong individual, and I'd never seen him cry, and I didn't understand the significance of this. And then he began to tell me who this guy was. And my father had marched with Dr. King. And so that night, there were riots going on all over Boston and every major city in the country. People setting stuff on fire, looting, the whole 9 yards. And it was just, oh my goodness, it was terrible. Actually, we were in Belmont, Massachusetts. We had moved to Belmont from Boston. Belmont is a suburb of Boston. We first settled in Boston, and the schools were so bad there that my father took me out of the school, and we moved to Belmont, where it had better schools. So that's where it happened. Where I was watching the TV program. And that night, with all the rioting, we went down to our old neighborhood and got some of my friends from there, where we'd first moved, and brought them out to Belmont just for their safety. And it was then that I began learning about Dr. King and all the great things that he had done, and he became a hero of mine. I wrote a letter of condolence to Coretta Scott King. And I never heard back. But of course, she got millions of letters from all over the world. Later on, when I would start writing my book on the Klan and everything, I wrote a letter to James Earl Ray, the person who was convicted of assassinating King. Now, I never believed that Ray killed King. I never believed that. But I wrote a letter to him, and he wrote me back. And I still have that letter, and we had this correspondence going on. James Earl Ray was definitely a racist, no question about it. But he did not assassinate King. His brother, Jerry Ray, was in the Klan down in Alabama. Even the King family today does not believe that James Earl Ray did it. He was set up as a patsy. But that was my introduction to Martin Luther King, and he became a hero of mine then and to this day. You know, and I keep learning new things about him, even still. The guy was just incredible in all his accomplishments and a great inspiration to me. You know, he has tons of quotes that I live by and that I admire. But one that probably drove me was in his I Have a Dream speech. I'm going to paraphrase it. One of his dreams in that speech was he had a dream that one day the sons of former slave owners would sit down to the table of brotherhood with the sons of former slaves. And that's what I'm attempting to do, and that's what I've been successful in doing.
Wow, Daryl. What are those? Can you explain what those moments are like for you when you know, much has been, you've detailed your story quite a bit in terms of first experiencing racism as part of that Boy Scout march, that moment of understanding who Martin Luther King Jr. was, all of the instances of people from the Klan that you have really helped guide them out. What are those moments like when you discover something new about the world and your place in it?
That's a good question. That's an excellent question. My experiences are probably a little bit different than most people's because I've had a lot of different experiences from my travels. So each one is a new experience. It's not something, I mean, yeah, it feels good when I discover something new. I'm always excited. And, you know, I want to get more into it and learn more about it. It doesn't surprise me so much anymore when racists, either black or white, change, because I know that that racism is a learned behavior, and what can be learned can be unlearned. Now, we go back to, like, say, the first time. When you grew up, when I grew up, you know, we heard things like, a tiger does not change its stripes. A leopard does not change its spots. It is what it is. And it's not going to change. And so that's what we believed, because that's what we were told. And so when I had that incident with the Cub Scouts, and I wanted to find out, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? I went to what I considered, you know, in my adult years, the best source. Who better to ask that question of than somebody who would go that far to join an organization that practices hating people who don't look like them or believe as they believe. So I began seeking out members of the KKK. And what the media gets wrong is I never set out to convert anybody. And to this day, I will say, I never converted anybody. Yes, I am the impetus for over 200 white supremacists to convert themselves and leave that ideology. But I did not set out to convert them, and I did not, facilitate that. I just influenced them to think about different things. I gave them things to think about, and they came to the conclusion, hey, maybe I am going down the wrong way. I need to change my direction. So when I first went in to interview this Klan leader, I had no premonitions, no projections or thoughts, preconceived notions that this guy was going to change. All I wanted from him was him to tell me how he could hate me. When he didn't even know me, all he saw was this, the color of my skin. Mm-hmm. And, we talked, and he was a human being. He was a human being with a bad ideology. We found a lot of things in common. We agreed to get together again, and we kept getting together. And each conversation we had, we started at opposite ends of the spectrum. But each conversation we had that gap between us began to narrow as we found more and more things in common. And, so then as the gap narrows, you're forming a relationship with your adversary. You start off at adversarial, posts, and then those goalposts move closer and closer in, and now you're in a relationship. And it's a cordial relationship. You're not best friends or anything like that. But then the more you talk, you find more commonalities, and the gap closes even more. And now you're heading towards a friendship. And when you've gotten to that point, you have found so many things in common that the trivial things that you have in contrast, such as skin color, or whether you go to a church, a mosque, a temple, or a synagogue, begin to matter less and less. And then they begin thinking, why did I hate that person? He and I like the same things and so forth and so on. We eat the same food. We like James Bond movies. He may think Roger Moore is the best, and I think Sean Connery is the best, and whatever. But we like James Bond. That kind of thing. And they began questioning their own thinking, and it goes through a period of cognitive dissonance, where they think, what Daryl said, made sense. Oh, but he's Black. But what he said was true. Oh, but he's Black. So, they're realizing what I said is true because they've researched it and now they found out that they were wrong. And they have a dilemma. Do they want to disregard my skin color and believe the truth because it is true, which means they'd have to change their ideological direction? Or do they want to consider my skin color and know what I said was true, but continue living a lie just because of my skin color? So that's their dilemma. Most people, not all, but most people will follow the path of the truth. And that's how I've been successful. There will always be those who will go to their grave being hateful, racist, and violent. But even some of those have come back to me later on and changed their minds. Because again, it's a learned behavior. Things can be unlearned, but there will always be some who will die that way. So, I grew up thinking if a tiger cannot change his stripes and a leopard cannot change his spots, why would I think that a Klansman or Klanswoman could change their robe and hood? They are who they are. And so when that first time happened, I was caught off guard, like, what? Are you kidding me? You're leaving? You're quitting? Yeah. And the guy attributed it to me. And so that was a big awakening, but that was only one. And then it began happening again and again and again, just through the power of conversation, which is why I always say a missed opportunity for dialogue is a missed opportunity for conflict resolution. And that is so true. Nothing gets resolved without talking about it. And so when it began happening again and again, I realized that, yes, a tiger cannot change his stripes and a leopard cannot change his spots. Why? Because they were born with those stripes and spots. A Klan member is not born with that robe and hood. So that can change. And so that's why I began continuing, even after I wrote my book, got it out, I continued these relationships. To this day, I still do it because I've seen these people change. I said, you know what, this is needed. I didn't think they'd changed before, so I never pursued that. But now I'm having these conversations and I'm seeing more and more change.
Daryl, the first time it happened, I believe it was a Grand Wizard who left the Klan, and you just said, attribute it to you. Why is it so important? Why do you make the distinction that was not something that you set out to do, that conversion was not your goal? Why is it important for us to understand that conversion was not your goal?
Because it's true. I did not believe those people could change. They were who they were, based on the tiger and the leopard, not considering the fact that the leopard and tiger are born with that stripe and spot. The Klansman is not born with that ideology cloaked in a robe and hood. That's something that they learned from wherever, from their family. Maybe my grandfather was in the Klan, my daddy was in the Klan, I'm in the Klan, so I'm going to pass it down to my kids. A family tradition, or they grew up in an environment, or they moved to a town where there was a lot of that around, and in order to assimilate in that town, you had to join the local Chamber of Commerce, the local country club, and the local KKK in order to do business, so you wouldn't be an outsider, things like that. So when I never, it wasn't my job to come in there and say, hey, you're wrong. You need to give me that robe, get rid of that ideology. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. And so just conversation, getting to know one another, then your guard begins coming down. When you have an antagonistic view against somebody else, but you have that conversation and they're not attacking you constantly and they're listening to you. And this is something also that I learned from all my travels. I have been to 61 countries between my childhood travels with my parents in the Foreign Service and now my adulthood travels as a professional musician, performing and lecturing and things like that. 61 countries, I've been to all 50 states. And what this means is I've been exposed to a wide variety of skin colors, ethnicities, cultures, ideologies, religions, and all of that has impacted who I am. It does not make me a better human being than anybody else, but it gives me a better perspective of humanity than those people who've not seen all those different things and know that people can get along. Because, most Americans, unfortunately, this is a fact, do not travel. They don't travel extensively. Europeans travel all the time. They're always going to different countries here and there and all that kind of stuff. In fact, according to the US Census, most Americans don't even have passports. Every European has a passport, So we are limited in knowing what goes on in other places. And as a result, we think that everywhere else operates the same way we operate, or that other countries should operate the way that we operate. And this is why when we do travel, we go over to some foreign country and we embarrass ourselves because we act like Americans and we do our traditions and our customs when you should realize when in Rome, you do as the Romans, and we make stupid mistakes because we don't know about those cultures. This is why it's so important to learn about other people. You say, wow, because for example, here in our country, we consider Friday the 13th to be superstitious. In Spain, they don't do that. In Spain, they consider Tuesday the 13th to be superstitious. So it's the same thing, different day, but should we laugh at them for considering it Tuesday when we consider it Friday? What's the difference? Okay. Now there are some different things that we don't do that people do, and they don't do that we do, and we have to understand that. And we learned that by traveling. I learned it by physically traveling. Today, we can travel virtually via the internet. We can learn about any other culture. Let's take advantage of those things. So that has given me a broader view, and I'm able to converse with people and let them know about different things that they might not otherwise have known about. And when I tell them something and they're incredulous, like, that can't be. And then when they go and research it out of curiosity, was that black guy telling me the truth, or was he just jerking me around? And they find out that it's true, then they have to decide, this is true, but it came from a black guy. How do I justify that? And that becomes their cognitive dissonance. So eventually, like I said, they will follow the truth.
Daryl, I don't know if you've heard this. I assume that you have, but I hear it in the work that I do with this show, that the question of why should I be the one to make the first move? They're the ones who are wrong. They're the ones who are displaying racism or sexism or whatever it is. They're wrong. I'm right. They can come to me. Why did we make the first move? Why did you make the first move?
All right, I'll tell you why. But right before that, just dovetailing into what I just said, in all those travels, I learned that no matter how far I go from our country, the U.S., whether it's right next door to Canada or right next door to Mexico or all the way around to the other side of the planet, no matter how different people may be that I encounter, they don't look like me, they don't speak my language, they don't worship as I do or whatever, I've always found out that each one of those people is a human being. And human beings everywhere in the world want these 5 core values in their lives. We all want to be loved. We all want to be respected. We all want to be heard. We want to be treated fairly. And we all want the same things for our family as anybody else wants for their family. And if we can learn to apply those 5 core values when we find ourselves in an adversarial situation, or we find ourselves in a culture or society in which we're unfamiliar, and it doesn't even have to be about race. It could be about any difference. Pick another hot topic: abortion, the Russian-Ukraine war, the last presidential election, global warming, nuclear weapons, whatever it is. You're on one side, somebody's on the other side. Apply those values, and that will foster a civil conversation and allow each person to see the other person's point of view. Some things you may even change your mind on, or they may change their mind on, or at least you'll see where the other person is coming from. Perhaps, you're not coming from there because you didn't have that experience. So, telling, a white person who is maybe cannot imagine being forced to drink from a separate water fountain or use a separate restroom because they didn't have that experience. But when they see somebody else having to go through that, then maybe it has that, that empathy or whatever. So that's what conversation fosters. You don't necessarily have to agree with the person or whatever, but try to understand where they're coming from. And then if it's a total falsehood, then they're more apt to hear you and hear the reality and see that they're believing something that wasn't true. Because they have a perception of you and they don't even know you. And then when you're sitting there having this conversation, they're getting to know you. And that's what's important. So I apply those 5 values, and that is what has enabled me to break down those walls and people's ears open up and then reconsider their own thinking as they're hearing what I'm sharing with them. Now, to your question, yes, I've heard it many different ways. Why should we be the first people to go out here and do this? It's not our job to teach white people how to treat us. And well, here's what I say. We've been treated poorly, terribly, for 400 years. And when somebody has treated you badly for 400 years, and 400 years later, they're still treating you badly, maybe it's time you change your methods. It's time to get out the box. When you continue doing the exact same thing, the exact same way, you're going to get the exact same result. So what I am doing, yes, it may be different, it may be radical, it may be whatever, but guess what? It's working. When you get tired of how you're being treated, then maybe you might change your own viewpoint and say, you know what? Maybe I need to try another strategy. Maybe I need to educate these people. And we need to stop with this mentality of, I'm not my brother's keeper. Maybe we should be our brother's keeper, because there's so much I can learn from you that I don't know. And there are things that I have that I can teach you that you don't know. And together we can benefit from each other and become more broad-minded, more worldly, no more things. So that's why, I'm not afraid to be the first person on the dance floor when the band starts playing.
I love that. And an ode to your music background as well. Daryl, what does that look like in everyday life? Not all of us are going to run up against a Klan every day. What does that look like? What can we change about how we live our lives right now that can begin to make the differences that you have seen the fruits of? Okay.
Well, consider my example. My example is one of extremities. I'm a Black person. I'm dealing not with just some guy next door who doesn't want, let's say, my kid dating his daughter.
Right.
Well, she's white. He's not a Klan member. He's not a neo-Nazi. Just well, that's not what I grew up with. I don't want, you stick to your own kind, stick to our kind. We can be friends. We can go out, and drink together. We can do this and do that. I'm just hypothetical. I don't have my own kids. But the racist next door. Okay. I'm not dealing with, I see them all the time, but I'm not going to that person. I'm going to the person who is not just the racist next door, but that person went so far as to take an oath, a blood oath, to join an organization that has a history of hanging Black men from trees, dragging them behind pickup trucks, bombing their churches, murdering them, to join that kind of an organization that practices hating people who don't look like them and who do not believe as they believe. That's an extreme racist, right? And here I am as a Black person. If I can sit down with that person and foster a conversation, and eventually that person is giving me their robe and hood, and we're becoming friends, and they come to my wedding, and all these things have happened, all right? Then it should be a hell of a lot easier for the person who says, I'm not going to Thanksgiving dinner with my family because my sister voted for so-and-so and I voted for so-and-so. And, we can't talk, because I can't believe she voted for that person. We've heard so much of that, especially in the last 4 years. That is just ridiculous. How do you have to realize, step back for a second. Whoever is president is only going to be in office for a minimum of 4 years, for a maximum of 8 years if they win the second term. How long have you been with your family? Decades. Are you going to throw away decades of a family relationship over somebody who's only going to be around for 4 or 8 years? You put it in perspective. My goodness, I'm going into a Klan rally where people like that have hanged people like me, and you can't sit across a dinner table and talk to your coworker, your family, your next door neighbor, you live next door to for the last 30 years. Get real. So this is the example I want to show people. If I can do it at those extreme levels, it should be quite easy to do it at the level I'm referring to, because not everybody is going to run out and go to a neo-Nazi or Klan rally, and they shouldn't unless they know what they're doing. Furthermore, as you pointed out, I'm a musician. I don't have a degree. I have a degree in music. I don't have a degree in sociology or psychology. I'm just a rock and roll piano player. But if I can do this, anybody can do it. It's just basic principles. That's all. Those 5 core values. Now, I will say this. Perhaps had I not had all that travel and exposure to different things, would I be doing this today? Maybe not. Maybe not, because maybe I would have grown up with all that stuff and not seen anything else and say, okay, well, that's just the way it is. Tiger doesn't change his stripes. Tiger doesn't change his robe, and I would stay as far away from those people as I could. That's a possibility. But my favorite quote of all time is by Mark Twain, the author. His real name was Samuel Clemens. But anyway, it's called the Travel Quote. And Mark Twain said, "Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. And many of our people need it sorely on these accounts. Broad, wholesome, charitable views of men and things cannot be acquired by vegetating in one little corner of the earth all one's lifetime." And that is so true, so true.
I'd never heard that quote, Daryl, but that gives me...
Look it up. Write it down. The Travel Quote, Mark Twain.
I will, absolutely. I'm curious. So this show is called The Follow-Up Question. I'm a former journalist. I love questions. Daryl, what question do you lead off with when you have these conversations? Does it change, or do you go back to the same one each time?
No, it changes depending upon the person. It might be, what led you to want to be in the Klan? And and the answers vary. And let's understand something. They come from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life. Most people who are not Klan related or whatever, their exposure to the Klan are a bunch of clowns in these bizarre costumes, throwing chairs on Jerry Springer at each other, at different people and on Geraldo. Mm-hmm. Do those people exist? Absolutely. I know plenty of those people. But the Klan goes from third grade dropout all the way to President of the United States. President Warren G. Harding was sworn into the Ku Klux Klan in the green room of the White House. President Harry Truman had joined the Klan for a short time before he became president. He didn't like it, he got out. All right, and then went on to become president. Supreme Court Justice Hugo Black was in the Klan at the time he got the appointment to be a Supreme Court Justice. He had to leave the Klan in order to sit on the Supreme Court. Senator Robert Byrd, who just died a few years ago, was the oldest living senator. He was from West Virginia. He was in the Klan in the 1940s. He got out, he changed his ways, he became an advocate for civil rights and things like that. So different educational backgrounds. If you don't know that, people tend to stereotype, oh, they're just a bunch of third grade uneducated dropouts, violent, et cetera, et cetera. As I said, they come from all different walks of life. So depending upon, I might ask, what led you to join the Klan? And depending upon their answer, that might take me in a different direction as to how I proceed with the interview, because they all don't join for the same reasons. For example, like I said, it could be it was a family tradition. Everybody, the ancestors passed down, and when you have a family tradition, it's kind of hard to break. Mm-hmm. So you just naturally assume that's what you do. Or somebody moves into a town that is a Klan stronghold, in order to assimilate and do business, you join. It's like a gang. If you move onto a block and there's a gang there, you got a choice. Either get your butt kicked or join the gang. And plus, you got to get your butt kicked in order to join the gang. But anyway, so it's that kind of thing. Or there's another situation that I've seen plenty of times where it might be a depressed town. I'd say a coal mining town. Most coal miners are white, or have been historically. And it's a family tradition. My daddy was mine coal. My granddaddy mined coal. As soon as I finished high school, I'm going to the mines, right? And these people, that's all they know is digging coal. So they've done that their whole lives, and then the company gets greedy. You know what? Let's lay off these workers and hire some of those immigrants that just came in. Whether they're legal or illegal, they'll accept this much money, and we're paying our guys this much money. So we can get rid of our guys and just pay those immigrants that much money, right? Exploitation greed. So they lay off these white people, they hire these people who came in, whether they're migrant workers, whatever, legal or illegal, and they put them in the coal mines. And then now they're making tons of money because they're saving from paying those white guys. Now the white guys are out of work. They can't get any other job because they're not trained for any other job. They don't know how to do anything else but mine the coal. So now the bank is knocking on that door for that money, that loan money, about to foreclose on their house. The Klan will come into a town like that and hold a rally and say, look, the blacks have the NAACP, the Jews have the ADL. Nobody stands up for the white man but the Ku Klux Klan. Come join us. We'll get your job back. Your job's not gone, but you're gone. Now there's some, racial epithet for a Hispanic person or racial epithet for a black person working at your job. Why aren't you there? You've been there for years. Your family's been there for years. And now you can't put food on your family's table. You can't put clothes on your kids' back because one of those has your job. Come join us. Now, these people who were working the mines, they were never racist. They were happy. They were getting paid. They're paying their bills. They're feeding their family. They're clothing their kids. Everything's good, And now all this is happening to them. And people are repoing their car and, harassing them for overdue bills, et cetera. They're getting evicted. So they're vulnerable. And they're thinking, well, what do I have to lose? Okay, give me an application. And they sign up that way. So depending upon how somebody gets entrance into these kinds of organizations, whether it's a neo-Nazi movement or Klan or alt-right or whatever the case is, you got to find out what is attracting them. Is it power? Is it necessity? Is it ideology? What is it? And that's the direction that I take when I, begin the interview.
Then the next question becomes, how do you bring about correction in these conversations? When they say something that is false, I think we have a tendency to want to immediately jump into, that's wrong. What you're talking about, the accusations and the labels begin to fly, right?
Exactly.
How do we?
Because we're acting out of emotion.
Exactly. How do we do that? How do we get?
Okay. When that person, that white supremacist, walks into the room and sees me, sees a Jewish person, sees a gay person, sees a Muslim, whatever it is they see that they don't like, their wall goes up, their ears get plugged, and they're ready. Okay? Because that's the enemy. I'm not going to let anybody tell me, what to think, et cetera. I'm going to defend and I'm going to attack. So I'm sitting here. This guy comes in my room to be interviewed, sees me, his temperature rises, his wall goes up, his ears get plugged, and he's ready. He has a seat, and we start talking. I'm listening to everything he's saying. I'm not cutting him off, even though he's saying stuff that I don't agree with. I'm listening. I'm giving one of those 5 values, right? People want to be respected. They want to be heard. They want to be loved. They want to be treated fairly. They want the same thing for their family as I want for my family. So I'm respecting him, not respecting what he's saying, but I'm respecting his right to say it. Now, 2 things. And this is a real example. I asked him, how can you hate me? You don't even know me. You just met me 5 minutes ago. Well, Mr. Davis, you have to understand one thing. Black people are prone to crime. And this is evidenced by the fact that there are more Black people in prison than white people. Now, is what he's saying true? Yes, absolutely, 100% true. And he'll tell me that, the data shows that. The statistics show that. Yes, these statistics do show that. The data does reflect that. And that's all he needs, because he already believes that. And now here's the data, that proves it. It's unbiased data. The data proves that there are more Black people in prison than white people. The data doesn't show you why. It just shows you the numbers. And that's all he needs. He doesn't bother to try to find out why, because he's satisfied that he's right now. But if he were to look into it, he would see that it's perhaps because the imbalance in our judicial system that sends Black people to prison for longer sentences than white people and things like that. But anyway, so basically he's calling me a criminal because I'm Black. He's telling me I'm prone to crime. I'm just sitting here listening to him. I don't interrupt him. All right. I don't believe him, but I'm just listening. Then he goes on to say, Black people are inherently lazy. They prefer to scam the government welfare system. They always have their hands out for a freebie. They don't want to work. All these programs geared towards Black people. Nothing geared towards white people. So now he's telling me I'm lazy. I'm still sitting here listening to him. As I'm listening, I'm allowing him to be heard. I'm respecting his right to say what he wants to say. So his temperature is coming down. All right. And then he goes, now get this one. He says, Black people are born with a smaller brain than white people. The larger the brain, the more capacity for intelligence. The smaller the brain, the lower the IQ. Then he tells me that this is evidenced by the fact that Black kids consistently, year after year, score lower on the SATs than white kids. Again, he is 100% correct in that fact. Yes, Black kids, year after year, overall, score lower than white kids on the SATs. And the data and statistics do show that. But again, he's not looked into why. The reason being, where do most Black kids in this country go to school? In the inner city. Where do most white kids in this country go to school? In the suburbs. It is a fact, not an opinion. It is a fact that inner city schools are not as well funded, are not as good facilities, don't have the up-to-date technology, equipment, textbooks, teachers, etc., that they have out in the suburbs. And I will guarantee you that white kids who go to school in the inner city can score just as low as those black kids, sometimes even lower. And black kids who go to school in the suburbs can score just as high, if not even higher than some of the white kids. And that it has absolutely nothing to do with the color of the student's skin or the size of the student's brain, but it has everything to do with the educational system in which that child is enrolled, right? But he doesn't bother to look into that because he already thinks blacks are inferior, and the data in his mind proves it, okay? So I've been called a criminal, I've been called lazy, and now I'm being called stupid. So I'm just sitting there listening to him. And his temperature and wall is coming down because I'm giving him that respect of allowing him to be heard. I'm listening to him. I'm respecting him, not in the sense that I'm believing what he's saying, but I'm respecting his right to say it. So by the time he finishes exhausting all of his vitriol, the wall is down, his ears are open. And now he's curious, how come this guy didn't push back? Because most people, you tell them, you call them these names, they're ready to push back, yell at you and cuss you out, and maybe even, swing at you. And here's this black guy just sitting there, he's insulting me left and right, and I'm just sitting there listening to him. So now he's curious as to what I think about what he said. So he wants to hear from me. Plus, he feels compelled to reciprocate because I listened to him. So now it's my turn. So now that it's my turn to speak, his ears are open. I want to make sure that I plant something in his ears. I can't do that when he first walked in the room because his ears are plugged. I'll be like talking to a brick wall. Nothing happened, right? So now is my opportunity to put a seed in him. I could go on the offense and attack him. I could say, no, you are the criminal. You are the one hanging black men from trees and dragging them behind pickup trucks and bombing their churches and so forth and so on. And I would be 100% correct because the Klan does have a history documented of those atrocities. But if I did that, what would happen? The wall would go back up, his ears would be plugged, right? I want to keep the wall down. So rather than go on the offense, I go on the defense. Rather than talk about him, I talk about myself. And I said, well, I hear what you're saying. And, and the data does show that. You're correct on that. However, let's look beyond the data. And then I explained to him, the imbalance. And then as far as the welfare thing goes, if you look, yes, there are plenty of black people on welfare and plenty of programs. But why are there programs? Because we were denied programs by the mainstream white people. All right. And if you look, there are more white people on welfare in this country than black people. Black people only make up 12% of the population. So you got to look at that. And then I tell them, listen, as far as, I've already done my homework on this person. I know this person barely made it out of high school. All right. I have a college degree, but I'm not going to throw that in his face because that would drive the wall back up. I would just talk about myself. So I say, listen, I've never measured my brain. I don't know what size it is, but I'm sure it's the same size as anybody else's. But as far as my SATs go, my SATs were good enough to get me into college. I have a college degree. Now, I'm not pointing out that he doesn't have one. I'm just letting him know that I have one, right? So I don't want to offend him or make him belittle him or anything like that. And I said, my SATs got me into college. So he goes home because now he's heard all this because the wall was down. And just like you and I or anybody else, at the end of the day, before we go to sleep, we reflect upon what transpired during the day. And he thinks, man, I just had a 3-hour conversation with this guy. And, and we didn't come to blows. We disagreed on some stuff, but, we didn't fight, we didn't yell. What that guy said was true. Oh, but he's black. But what he said made sense. Oh, but he's black. So they struggle with this for a while. And then they have to make up their mind to resolve this dilemma. Do I believe what Daryl said because I know it's true, but and disregard his skin color, which means I got to change my ideology? Or do I know that it's true, but because he's Black, I'm going to continue living a lie? Do I want to live a lie? And like I said, most people will follow the truth. There'll be those who will follow the lie because, they have some kind of power. And how do you go to because, when you rise in the ranks, you get higher and higher, Grand Dragon, Imperial Wizard, you got a lot of followers, right? People who look up to you, they worship you. How do you go to those people that you brought in and who worship you and tell them, hey, listen, I led you all down the wrong path. I was wrong. That's a hard thing to do. But I've had a lot of them do it. And so people like that in power, it may take them a little bit longer to get off that power because power is a bizarre thing. It gets a hold on you. It changes who you are. And, when you've been in power for 400 years, it's hard to get off that throne. You don't want to give it up. Look at our last president. He was only in power for 4 years, and he thinks he's still there. So it's a hard thing to give up. You mentioned music. Yes, I'm a musician. So let's put it in that perspective. If I have a number one hit, number one on the charts, I don't want to see it fall down to number 2, 3, 4, and now I'm in the top 10, and now I'm in the top 20, and now I'm in the top 100, and then I've fallen off the charts. I want to stay at number 1.
Daryl, I wish I could. I've got so many more questions, but I know we're running up against the end of the time here.
Well, hey, I'm not opposed to doing a part 2. We can do that sometime. I'll be happy to.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. The last question I want to ask you before I let you go here today, and yeah, I'd love to pick this up at another time. What's a question that you wish you were asked more about all of this?
Man, you asked some great questions.
Thank you, sir.
I've heard tons of questions, but you asked some that I haven't heard. Probably a question would be, what is my role in all this? What can I do? I don't want to go to a Klan rally. I'm afraid I'd lose it, or I'd be scared, or I'd start cussing those people out, or whatever. What can somebody like me do? Well, even those people are very important. They are as important as I am. And the example that I would give would be this. Think about your very favorite movie. It won 10 Oscars, whatever. Okay, it's your favorite movie. And I ask you, do you know who starred in the movie? Well, of course I know who starred in the movie. Denzel, Meryl Streep, whoever starred in the movie. And do you know who the director is? I think it was Steven Spielberg. Do you know the name of the guy who operated one of the cameras? How about the name of the stunt guy, or the name of the guy who did the lighting, or the wardrobe designer? Well, no. Why would I know that? But you know what? That movie is great, and won all these Oscars, not just because of Denzel and Meryl Streep. Yes, they are phenomenal actors, but everybody contributed to that whole movie. Okay, the guy who set up the wiring, the electricity, the wardrobe designer, the set designer, the guy who did the blocking, the guy who set up the lights, the camera operator up in the crane, the camera operator right there, the director, the producer, all these people contributed to the whole. So they are, all you see are the people in front of the camera, but the people behind the camera are the ones directing those people. So everybody contributed. If you don't want to be on the front line, like I am, no problem. You can be on the back line. You can be on the sideline. You can get online and do things, okay? Just be doing something that contributes to the whole picture, because you are as important as I am. You're my equal, and I'm relying on you.
Beautiful stuff, Daryl. Thank you so much, man. This has been wonderful.
Thank you.
looking forward to this for so long, and I'm glad we could make this happen. Best wishes in the work that you do. And yeah, let's see you soon. Okay.
Stay in touch and we'll do it again, my friend.
All right.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Holy cow, what a fantastic conversation. Just absolutely remarkable. Life-changing for me, and I hope so for you as well. So many thanks to Daryl Davis for joining me on the show and for sharing his story, his wisdom, his insight, his perspective. Please do me and Daryl a huge favor and share this episode with someone you know who might also find some value in listening to our conversation. This episode, more than any, please share with your network. Help spread the good word about the importance of asking more questions and the power that it can have to bring us together. And if you like the conversations with the amazing guests like Daryl Davis that I have on each and every episode, please subscribe so that you never miss when a new episode drops. If you ever want to get in touch with me, you can always email me at michael@thefollowupquestion.com or go to michaelashford.com and reach out there. I'll catch you on the next episode of The Follow-Up Question. And until then, keep asking questions.